All right, welcome into another day of our daily Devos in December. Pastor Rick here. I'm excited to be here with you and to talk another day about the idea of encounter with Jesus, and what an encounter with Jesus does to us so that we're able to be who we're meant to be to the world. But it starts with us knowing Him, us being with Him, walking with Him, getting to know Him. And so we're going to jump into John chapter 21. And it says, later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. Several of the disciples were there: Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples. Simon Peter said, "I'm going fishing." He denied the Lord, and he was like, you know what? I don't deserve to be with the Lord. I don't deserve to walk with Him because I denied Him. I gave Him up, and so he's like, you know what? I'm going fishing. I'm going back to what I've always known, to what I know I'm good at. And the other disciples with him were like, hey, you know what? We're coming with you. We're going to do that too. So Peter, obviously a man of influence amongst the other disciples. So they said, we'll come too, they all said. So they went out in the boat and they caught nothing all night. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who He was. And He called out, "Fellows, have you caught any fish?" "No," they replied. Then He said, "Throw out your net on the right-hand side of the boat and you'll get some." And so they did. And they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple that Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." He was like, hey, I've seen this before. I remember this happened to us before, and that was Jesus. And so he says, "It's the Lord." And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic and jumped in the water and headed to the shore. So that's like the first thing I just wanted to point out was, Peter's strong desire to be with the Lord. But going back to John chapter 21, verse 1, it says, later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples. Jesus is the one that made the step towards them. He's the one that wanted to manifest Himself to the disciples. And then here, when Simon Peter hears that it's the Lord, he runs. He's like, forget y'all, I'm out of here. I'm going to see Jesus. So he jumps in the water. He's, all wet and soaking and running through the water. Oh, the effort that it takes to run through water while you're in water. And so, and the others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards from shore. And when they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them. So, you know what? Jesus, he's the man, he's like, I need some fish. I got some fish. Got some fish and some bread, ready to rock and roll, feed these boys, because He knows, hey, they're going to be hungry, and we're going to fellowship around a meal, and we're going to do life together here. And so I love that Jesus is, so one, He pursues us, pursues relationship with us, and two, He brings us what we need. He knows we're going to be hungry. He brings food to eat with us. I love Jesus. He's so amazing. So they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire and some bread. "Bring some of the fish you've just caught," Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to the shore, and there were 153 large fish. 153. It's very interesting that they counted every single one of them and recorded the exact number. And yet the net hadn't torn. So that's a big difference from the last time they went out with the Lord and He told them to cast their nets on the other side. Their nets were breaking. So something had changed in them where their nets didn't break anymore. And so now come and have some breakfast, Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask Him, "Who are you?" They just knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. And this was the third time Jesus had appeared to His disciples since He had been raised from the dead. The third time. How many times did Peter deny the Lord? 3 times. How many times did Jesus reveal Himself after the resurrection to the disciples? 3 times. Jesus is awesome. I love that He cares enough about Peter. He cares enough about the disciples that He wants to just keep on showing up, keep on revealing himself to them so that they can go and spread the gospel. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep." And Jesus said a third time, he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." And so, Jesus initiated this contact, this encounter. Jesus initiated it. He came out to the shore. Peter responded. Peter responded with a hungry heart. When John told him, "Hey, that's the Lord," Peter immediately responded, and he went crazy to get to Jesus. I love that Jesus brought food and he prepared a place for them to gather. And that's just like the Lord. He just makes room for us to come and meet with him. And I love that he came and he revealed himself to them multiple times. And that should encourage you if you've had times where Jesus has revealed himself to you and yet you still find yourself doubting or worried or frustrated or whatever it might be. Know that he knows who you are. He knows what you need. And those worries and those doubts and those frustrations and those concerns, they don't stress him out. Like, he knows who you are. He knows what he got into when he called you. I read a thing the other day that said you should encourage yourself with the fact that when God called you, he already factored all of your stupidity into that calling. And I was like, amen. I received that as a super encouraging word, that all of the stupidity that's inside of me, Jesus knew about it before he died for me, before he extended that invitation to me, before he invited me to come in to relationship with him. And then I just thought it was interesting in verse 17 where it says, Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question. And I don't know if you've ever had the Lord ask you a question that kind of hurt your feelings. But if you really get honest, you know that you needed that question to be asked. Because Peter needed to be restored from his 3 denials. And Jesus gave him a third time to say, "Peter, do you love me?" And so it's funny that even though his emotions were kind of getting in the way, he still responded. And I appreciate the humility that he responded with to say, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And so what I really pulled out of this is encounter with Jesus results in restoration. Encounter with Jesus results in restoration. And it could be many different kinds of restoration. There's so many different kinds to see, so many different kinds of restoration for us to walk in, whether it's a physical restoration, an emotional restoration, a spiritual restoration. I mean, like relational restoration. Maybe it's family, maybe it's friends, who knows. That encounter with Jesus leads to restoration. And so we shouldn't try to pursue a whole bunch of restoration, reconciliation outside of encounter with Jesus, but that it really starts with Jesus. And so I hope you're encouraged today. God bless you. Have an awesome day today, and I will see you tomorrow.